Hey everybody, thanks for joining us at the CSA AI Q4 Summit. That's a huge acronym, and on the screen you can see CSA Artificial Intelligence Summit for Q4, quarter four. I'm pretty excited to be here just because of the guests, or I should say the partners I have on this presentation. It's not the first time we've done this dance, but it's a really important topic that we wanted to cover here. So yeah, let's get to it. This is our session. Inside the AI controls matrix, we're going to go deep. We're going to introduce how it came about, pretty much the blood, sweat, and tears that went into building this, and we're going to have Arpitha, Mark, and Jaswinder really talk about what it means. We're going to break it down. We're going to explain all the elements, all the components, all the structures, and just talk about the future of leveraging the AICM and how it's going to be incorporated in other aspects of CSA as well. So, without further ado, this is the lovely list of our people that are going to be speaking today. I'm going to jump over to the agenda slide where I'm going to hand it over to Arpitha to really talk to us about what we're going to learn today, what we're going to talk about.
Thank you, John. So today's agenda, we are going to cover on the conception of the AI control framework. How did this thought originate with the Cloud Security Alliance team, and how they put together the working groups, and how they started the project. The next would be to discuss about the AI control matrix, what it is, what are the components of it, how many controls, and then we are going to deep dive into the architectural relevance and the architectural aspects of AICM. We have examples as well to explain how, when you download this AICM for implementation, how you could use the different elements in the bundle to interpret the model and as well as apply it day to day in your work. Finally, we are going to end it with the future use of AICM and other projects that CSA is doing on AI. We would also be covering about why this entire thing is very important for the industry and what's the benefit of doing this and how the community as a whole can benefit. Thank you. Handing it over to John.
Yeah, and I am excited to just introduce everybody who is a part of the project and the experts that are on hand today. And so why don't we just go around the room, really quickly. Arpitha, you already gave us the agenda, so maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you were doing on the project.
Sure. So I was part of the working group formulating the question controls, part of the editorial team for the AI control matrix. I did author some of the implementation guidelines, auditing guidelines, and was the task lead for CAIQ along with Jazz. So we put all this together. So I hand it over to Jazz.
Hello, thanks John, thanks Arpitha. So similar to Arpitha, I was also involved in the CAIQ, the auditing guidelines, and also the controls matrix. We collaborated with a lot of different volunteers to help drive, what's been published now. So we are very excited to have this framework now available to everyone.
Thank you. I was also working with Jazz and Arpitha on the CAIQ and helping sort of match the controls to the questions that we would want to ask. And I played a very small part, but I did get to learn a lot. It was sort of my first introduction. It was good to be a part of a team.
Thanks, Mark. And I feel like I always jump into the content because I get excited too, and I forget to introduce myself as well. So my name is John Yeoh. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer at the CSA, and me and our CTO, Daniela Catadou, we lead the R&D division here at CSA, and so I'll get a chance to talk about how we kicked off the CCM and the AICM project together. And I had to highlight the four of us because I think people want to know why us, why are we here, why are we talking about this. The four of us each had our hands in putting this thing together, so I'm glad we're able to talk about it with everybody today as well. All right, so introducing the cloud controls matrix. Or I should say, introducing the AI controls matrix, but it's how we kind of started. So we've known for a long time that there needs to be more governance and even some regulation around AI, and the industry has been slow to do that. CSA has been covering AI for over 5 years, but of course, when the generative AI era ramped up, but believe it or not, it's less than 3 years ago. It became even more important to really understand how to govern and address generative AI and other AI challenges that people were facing. And so we looked to do that. So we addressed, at the time, what was going on with generative AI and ChatGPT. Together with OWASP, we did a lot of projects on risks and the threat taxonomies. And what we ended up doing, which I thought was pretty interesting, is along the way we created different guidance documents for AI, including a threat taxonomy, including something that we followed with OAuth's top risks for LLM, and we looked into, hey, we need to really establish a framework that can address risk mitigations and governance for AI. And one lonely week, I should say, there are about maybe 50 of us in Seattle, Washington, representing 7 different countries, and we split into 2 groups. Daniela Katadou, he took half of the group, and they looked at the existing cloud controls matrix. And what made that was important was because all the large language models, the frontier models, they were all hosted in major cloud environments, and to access them was through a lot of different APIs and cloud pathways. So it made sense to like, okay, let's start from the cloud controls matrix and look at which controls of, all at the time 197 controls, which ones are applicable to AI, and then maybe even touching on, how do we tweak a bit of those to actually apply those to AI. The other half of the group, which I was a part of, we went into the actual technology, so looking at large language models, the AI itself, and understanding how do we address these threats and these risks. And so we looked at the OS top 10. We looked at the CSA threat taxonomy that we put together, and we talked about, like, for these threats, for these risks, what controls need to be in place to mitigate and even remediate against those. And after a couple days of brainstorming separately, we got back together and did an overlapping attempt of like, all right, what would this new controls framework look like? What is needed? Do we need additional controls at the time? We identified, I think, 26 net new controls, and even looking at different domains too. So we knew that the models themselves had to be addressed. And all in all, my goodness, we came up with this really interesting structure. And I know the team on the call, Arpitha, Jazz, and Mark, expanded on that original model to what we have today and what we're going to go through. And so the AI controls matrix was designed for that. It extended controls from the cloud. It addressed the threats and risks that we were seeing in AI. And gosh, I don't know, you guys. I think that was kind of at least how we got things started. And I'm going to hand it over to someone else to go through the rest in more details.
All right, thank you, John. So, like John was saying, there have been multiple working groups, working on this bundle with many volunteers. So this AI cloud controls matrix is available and open to everyone. It was built on the foundation of the cloud controls matrix that many of us have been using for years and are really familiar with. It is expert driven, so those individuals that have been supporting the working groups are experts in their space, and they bring the knowledge and the expertise to this work. It is consensus based and it's vendor agnostic. We're able to leverage these controls to be able to evaluate, using the CAIQ many vendors. So it's vendor agnostic and can be used broadly. So the generative AI service stack is a layered architecture of technologies, tools, and services. They support the development and deployment of the operation of generative AI applications. So the stack is made up of 5 layers. The first layer is data. It has the foundational feeds into the AI system. The next layer is the generative AI applications. These are the end user facing tools, such as chatbots and content generators. And then you have the orchestrated services. These manage and optimize the systems. These include things like integration plugins and LLM gateways. And then you have the foundation models, which are the core AI models and their metadata. And finally, we have the cloud and LLM infrastructure. This is the underlying environment that hosts and secures the stack. we'll go into now the AI controls matrix structure a little bit. The model has 18 security domains listed here and 243 controls. The model security domain is new, and it addresses the threats associated with the building and the use of AI applications. The current framework has 31 AI-specific controls, 13 cloud-specific controls, and then there's 196 controls that apply both to AI and cloud. The AI controls matrix architecture has AI controls at the core. And the different pillars, there's 5 pillars. They include control type, which are both AI and cloud. Who owns those controls, which are across each layer. The architectural relevance of the control. And this ensures that all the different layers of the stack are covered. The lifecycle relevance, which ties the controls to the LLM lifecycle phase, and then the threat category, which addresses specific AI vulnerabilities, such as model manipulation. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Arpita to go over the AICM architecture in a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Jazz. So as we understand, this is built on CCM, the Cloud Control Metrics. So the shared responsibility model becomes very important. So before we get into the shared responsibility model, we have to understand what are the different control types. So there are AI-specific controls, which basically address the requirements and the features for any AI system or application. Then we have the layer where it is meshed into other services, other workflows, and also how it is deployed. So that is where we determine whether it is an AI-specific control or a cloud-specific control or the cloud and AI-specific, because these controls generically apply to any of these different features that are called out as in the requirements. So we have a control ID, a control title, and the control specification. And each control specification's relevance is identified in the control type, the ownership, the architectural relevance, the life cycle, as well as the threat model. Now, because it's a shared responsibility model, each person in the Gen AI stack has their role to play. So we have the service provider who develops the models, that's the model service provider. Then we have the person who orchestrates these services, that is, weaves them together so that we have the workflows built, and that's the orchestrational service provider. Then all this is put together, bundled together into an application, and that's the Gen AI Ops processing infrastructure service provider. These applications are used by customers, and that's where we have AIC or the AI customers. And then we have the cloud service provider, because it is hosted on the cloud, and they are the CSPs. This spreadsheet is pretty huge. We have just a small section of it covered here, and that would address the ownership. Now, the AI, for any life cycle, for anything to be developed, there is a life cycle. Just like how we are all familiar with the software development life cycle, there is an AI life cycle too, and that AI life cycle spreads over various stack elements. So right from the physical infrastructure to the network, the compute, storage, application, and data. If you look at it in a different view, these are the primary assets that basically support the entire AI application. So the applicability of the controls with reference to each of these assets is also called out in the spreadsheet. So once we have the infrastructure layer nailed out, then we have the lifecycle relevance. So it starts with the preparation to develop a model, the data. Then we develop the model and use the data, train it to get the outcomes that we need. The evaluation and the validation and the testing that's performed to determine that the outcome from the model is working as expected, is ethical, there's no bias, there's transparency. That's what is covered under evaluation and validation. Then the next thing is to understand how it is deployed. So if you remember the Gen AI stack, we were talking about it could be deployed on the cloud, it could be on-prem in our data center, it could be hybrid, or it could be edge that we use on our computing devices. So what is the type of deployment and how do these controls apply to any type of deployment is what is addressed under the deployment column. Then how are all these services delivered, and is utilized, operational aspects, the continuous monitorings that we have to do, the logs that we have to capture, the user access the controls that we have to implement, all that's addressed as a part of the delivery and the operationalization phase of the model. Finally, like any other application, any other service, it has to be retired. There will be end of life, there will be end of support. So that's what is covered under the service retirement. What are the things that we have to do, the good hygiene practices, to ensure that we move smoothly from one service to another service? Either it could be an upgrade, it could be decommissioning of something and introducing something else. All that's what is covered under life cycle relevance. Then we have the threat categories. So the idea is, if you implement these controls, then you should be able to mitigate these threats reasonably. Or if you could also look at it as, what should I do to ensure that these threats do not occur in my environment when I deploy an AI application? So the controls are mapped to the different threats. It could be threats at the model layer, it could be threats at a data layer, or it could be the threat when it is integrated in the workflow, the APIs and the plugins that we use. Or it could be when the application is deployed in our environment across the various supply chains. And also, it ties back to the various components that we had. It could be a denial of service because the network or the compute or something is compromised. Or it could be because we don't have the right processes or controls in our environment, and hence the lack of governance. So these are the 5 pillars of AICM. And as already mentioned, each of these controls have been mapped to each of these pillars. And the idea is, if you implement it as it's defined, then you should get a reasonable assurance and feel comfortable to start using it in your environment. Now I hand it over to Jazz to explain about the different components of AICM.
Thank you, Arpita. So the AI controls matrix is part of a bundle. It's a core controls part of the bundle, so it has all the core controls, and the CAIQ, which is the Consensus Assessment Initiative Questionnaire, has the questions that are mapped to the controls matrix. And these are the questions that we would use to, for example, evaluate our AI suppliers to determine if they have the right set of controls in place. It also includes the implementation guidelines. These are the guidelines that we can leverage to implement the controls matrix, or the controls in the controls matrix. And the auditing guidelines have been developed to help us evaluate the controls. And the controls themselves are mapped back to multiple other frameworks, such as ISO 42001, which enables us to be able to show coverage against common control frameworks that are out there. I'm going to hand it over to Arpita now to provide some additional information.
So we did discuss about the AI control framework, and we know what comes within the bundle. So now let's try to understand how it can be used. So let's take one example, audit and assurance 02. And it's about conducting independent audit and assurance assessments according to the relevant standards, at least annually. We understand that this is applicable to a cloud, AI, or cloud and AI, both. It is applicable, it's a generic control, and it applies to any kind of a control type. It applies to anybody who's using the AI framework. It applies to any layer in the architectural stack, or it is applicable according to the ownership in the life cycle, and it will help finally address the threats and give assurance, or also give a visibility on what issues that may be there in our environment when we are doing this particular development activity. So let's try to understand from a control type perspective. So for a cloud service provider, they want to ensure that the infrastructure is safe for the AI environment to the AI application to be hosted. The data of our customers will be safe. So they would actually look at this particular control on how they could assess and assure the customers and their other stakeholders that hosting that application in their environment is fine. Then let's move on to the next layer in the stack, the model service provider. somebody is using the model, they want an assurance that this model will work as expected, the input is validated, the output is relevant, and that all the required tests have been performed and any issues that are known are identified. So the model service provider may decide to do an adversarial threat analysis, or they might do an application penetration test during the life cycle that they follow. Now, when it comes to an application provider, they are going to integrate all these services along with the orchestrated service provider. So they want to know whether all the integrations and orchestrations are working fine. So again, they have to do their own level of testing and validation to determine that this is working as per the requirements, it's not creating any new threat, it's not increasing the threat surface. Finally, when we look at it as a cloud service provider, they, as already mentioned, they have to worry about the infrastructure and protecting it. Customer, what does a customer need to do? We have to ask for these reports to feel assured that these tests have been performed, these audits have been performed, and the issues identified as a part of these audits and assurances have been mitigated, and we are not inheriting any technical debt in our environment. Now, this would apply to any layer in the architecture. It would be applicable to any phase in the life cycle. And finally, it would help address any of the threats. While the primary responsibility of ensuring that all this is being done is with the GRC team or the internal audit team, I believe security is everybody's responsibility and each person has their role to play. The implementation guidelines will explain the differences between how each owner is going to perform a control, and the auditing guidelines will give the guidance on how this control has to be implemented or audited in any environment. I hand it over to Mark.
Thank you, Arpita. Appreciate it. Every company has to deal with this now because AI is everywhere, and this is going to help us get that visibility we need and making sure the controls are right. It's a very complex environment. There's a lot of factors. There's a lot of different scenarios, whether it's cloud, on-prem. All these things create a lot of ambiguity and a lot of challenges for leaders to show that we're doing the right things. But it also helps all the people, like Arpita said, risk is everyone's responsibility. This will help us and help all of us be on the same page, but it will also help us all make sure we're not missing anything critical. And I think that's the main value of a lot of the frameworks that we use today, and this one being specific to AI, because AI is different, it is complex, there are certainly synergies, but there's a lot of things to worry about and look about, and it can be very overwhelming if you don't have some of the risks and some of the outlines to help guide you in making sure that things are under control. And we see more and more countries are implementing their laws and regulatory requirements. And typically there's a lot of crossover between all of them. And if you're following a framework, you may have to tune or tweak it from time to time, which I expect this is a living, breathing document. We will do that as well. But it should be a good starting point for everyone to utilize. It's certainly going to make us more efficient. It makes it so we don't have to go and do the research ourselves, figure out what controls. We have a learning bed to start from. It helps make decisions when it's too risky or we need to put in other mitigating controls and things to help move things forward. I think there's a lot of value in having a risk matrix that can help make sure that we have the right controls and the right level of risk for our company or your company that makes you feel that you're in control of the environment. And as you're probably seeing from third parties, they want to know that you have your controls in place as well. And so they're certainly going to have questions that you're going to be able to answer when you have the framework applied to your environment. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, John.
Not much else to say, to be quite honest. We're going to wrap things up. I'm just going to talk really briefly about what's next for the AI controls matrix. If you're familiar with the STAR program that CSA has, there are over 4,500 registered providers that put their products into this registry, and it's based off how they meet the criteria in the cloud controls matrix, and now the AI controls matrix as we've extended those controls, and you heard from Jazz and Arpitha and Mark and how that was done. The AI controls matrix will be a part of STAR. STAR for AI, it's going to not just ingest how people meet the AI controls matrix, we're also working on, we see a lot of the ISO 42001 certifications already out there, so we're going to look for how that would be recognized in the STAR platform itself. And I'll just close on, hey, we're not just building things to secure AI. At CSA, we're trying to leverage AI for security as well. So the AI controls matrix, STAR for AI, are going to be great tools for assessing your AI use and your AI products and your AI resources. STAR validated is something that we're using to actually leverage AI to assess the responses in the cloud controls matrix and the CAIQ questionnaire, and that'll be used to provide real-time feedback for those who are actually uploading their results, so they can improve some of the way that they respond to the questions. And we're using AI in the risk rubric, and so what we're doing is we are trying to assess the risk in large language models. And so we have a risk rubric AI for that, where you can actually check out a scoreboard for the top 10 highest rated LLMs that we've addressed, as well as the bottom 10 LLMs, and which ones need to be improved. And it's very transparent and open on how those are graded. You can see the criteria, and again, open weights, open source for that as well. Boy, I think we're closing up here. Arpita, you want to bring us home just to talk about what the AICM bundle is, and why you brought the four of us together to talk about this?
Yeah, thank you, John. The AICM bundle, once you download it, it's published as a white paper along with the control matrix. Then we have the implementation and the auditing guidelines and the various cross maps. And there are a ton of white papers to basically understand how to interpret the AICM. So you could download this using the QR code, or directly go to the AICM, this Cloud Security Alliance webpage, and download this particular matrix. And we hope to keep it current. As we did mention, it's the living and the breathing document. There are already a lot of improvements that we have identified, mapping to some of the various other frameworks that we have. We are talking about how some other controls could be introduced specifically for AI. So there's lots of discussion that's going on. There's lots of buzz there. So please be on the lookout for this and keep checking this webpage frequently.
I think that's it, right? I want to thank Mark, Arpita, Jazz for sharing everything today. Not just that, too, download things, but you can get involved in the AICM activities too. So check out cloudsecurityalliance.org. You can download things, you can share things, and you can actually get involved too.